Fight!
Welcome to round 4 of my fight with the MR2 Spyder engine swap. In the last round, the Spyder eked out a little tiny victory over me. You may not have noticed because I had enough of a lead to absorb it. However, in this round I think you'll find that the MR2 has shown that it can still put the smack down on me, and that my victory in this fight is by no means assured. I'm going to start off today with the fuel injection system. So there's the difference between the two rails. You can see how one comes off this way and one comes off that way, and I guess I need this one. Okay, this is something that I'm surprised didn't come on any of the videos, many videos that I watched on doing a 2ZZ swap into an MR2 Spyder. On the left is a 1ZZ fuel injector. On the right is a 2ZZ fuel injector. And I decided if I was going to replace the fuel injectors, I was going to go ahead and replace all of the O-rings. This is what came in the kit to for the 2ZZ fuel injector. It comes with the one that goes into the actual fuel rail, and I don't think there's a problem there. But on the other end, you can see what this looks like and what the one that came in the kit looks like. I believe this one is for something else, so I'm just discounting that one. And the mystery was solved when I pulled the 1ZZ out and found, oh look, they look the same. So I went back to the parts store and asked them what the deal was, and everything they came up with showed that this is the correct one for the 2ZZ motor. I went to 2 different parts stores and finally went to the Toyota dealership. They all had them in stock and they all looked like this. If you get the kit and it doesn't look like what you got with, say, a JDM 2ZZ fuel injector, don't worry about it. Just use the 2ZZ and get it here in the US. I looked at where the connectors came from off of the harness and figured, they would plug in. But in fact, they went over the rail and plugged in the other side. And I know this because if you look at the way number 4 is seated, I'll try and rotate it around. You can see, I'm going to set it down. You can see right here how it sits flat on the metal. The plastic fits flat on the metal. And if I roll it around the other way and I try and plug it in here, there's interference right here and it causes it to sit crooked. So it really kind of can't go on that way. If you're careful, you'll see that. I bought this glow shift oil sandwich component that goes in between the block and the oil filter and gives you more ports to add sensors and things, because I've decided to add a oil pressure gauge in the car, and I'm thinking about an oil temperature gauge as well. Just really getting a lockdown on this oil thing. In case you haven't noticed, I wasn't real happy about this whole ordeal. Some people were complaining that it leaked and a few other things, but I have to say, at least for the 2ZZ, it looks like a pretty good choice. How it goes on is there's a rubber gasket here, and that may be where some people were having some problems. They may have accidentally reversed it because it's just metal on this side. I'm pretty sure it's an aluminum piece. And you just make sure that rubber gasket fits up against where the oil filter goes, as if it were an oil filter. You put a little bit of oil on there, and then you put this way through, and you just go on and you screw that on where the oil filter would normally go. And as you can see, diameter wise and size wise, it's a really good fit. And the cool thing is you can rotate it to any direction to expose any of the 4 ports that come on it. You basically can screw your oil filter on underneath that. And now the unused ports get sealed with these plugs that they give you, and they say to wrap them in Teflon tape, and that may be another problem that people had. Maybe they weren't using Teflon tape right. It's always important to wrap the Teflon tape in the same direction that you tighten. That way the Teflon won't want to be pulled off of the spool. Imagine a spool of wire and you were pushing on the wire. If it were like a stiff wire, it would want to unravel, right? You'd want to pull on the wire to tighten it down on the drum, and that's what you want to happen when you tighten a bolt with some Teflon tape or something in there. And it only takes about 2 wraps of Teflon tape, at least if you're doing plumbing, so I kind of assume it's the same, right? Alright, so check this out. This is how I know for sure it's a Japanese oil filter. Look at the name. Drive Joy. I mean, if that isn't Japanese, I don't know what is. But you'll notice all these marks on it. This was put on by the biggest Japanese guy in all of Japan. He was like world's strongest Japanese man, I think, because wow, I had a hard time getting it off. I did not put mine on that tight. So I may or may not have put this on previous videos that I was adding an oil pressure gauge, and I did decide to go ahead and add a oil temperature gauge as well. And what I found was something really important, so I'm glad I did, because when I pulled it off, I got, I threw it away already, but you'll notice the Teflon tape here on the end kind of wrapped around the end of the block off bolt, and I'm pretty sure that that will come off. I only have one hand, and anyway, I think that will come off and get into your oil, and I don't think that's a good thing, because when I pulled the first one out, a little piece was in fact stuck in the threads there on the sandwich, so you can see how it's completely separated from the rest of the bolt. I mean, the Teflon is separated from the rest of the Teflon because the threads have severed it. So make sure you don't get any extra Teflon on there. In fact, I would recommend just only putting Teflon kind of like that is right there on the very top few threads. I'm going to back out. I hope that was in focus the whole time. Anyway, point is, don't get Teflon in your holes, and make sure that Teflon in your holes is a bad thing. That's what she said. So I pulled them all. Well, I didn't pull this one off because I didn't put Teflon on this one. It had a coating on it, which I assumed served that purpose. But I pulled these three off, checked, and then you saw the one that I had, so it definitely had something that may have come off into the oil system. The other two look good. I actually put some on this one, tightened it in, and then pulled it back out just to see what happened. Just wanted to really feel comfortable with it, and it looked good, so I went ahead and put Teflon in this basically the same way and just tightened it up. So that's my temp sensor, and it's a oil pressure sensor, and these two are capped off. Hopefully they won't leak. We at GlowShift thought that you might like to conveniently locate your oil pressure gauge within 1.5 feet of your oil filter where it's easy to read. We therefore provided you with this lovely cable. Yeah, I'm calling BS on that. They basically say in the instructions that an extension kit is available. I'm like, come on, serious? You wanna, oh, there it is.
You see it blast off?
Yeah, you just missed it. Literally in the blue, and that was gone. When I pulled the wiring loom out, I spent a bunch of time cleaning it up and also sort of securing it. Some of the tape had come off, some of the wiring loom had fallen apart. I'm working on that now. So I got new wiring, split loom to stick the wires in to protect it. And so it doesn't get all dirty, it won't get the engine dirty, it'll be easy to work with. Now it's time to add some wires. I have to add quite a few wires actually. I added all 4 of these that go to the oil gauge. I don't think it's going to be long enough. I don't think they expected it to go from all the way from the back of the car to the front. Most cars have the engine in the front. Here's the other end. So I may have to cut that somewhere at some point, preferably inside the car. So hopefully it'll make it to the other end of this loom down there, where it goes inside the car. I also have an oil temperature sensor that I've added, and it needs wiring as well. It's a green wire, so I went ahead and got some green wire. I have quite a bit of wire that is made for car applications, so it can handle the heat under the hood and stuff. I have to mount a female one on the end of the green wire and run that again all the way out. In addition, something that will be in a different video, I'm trying to add factory cruise control to this car, and there are a few wires that come through the firewall for the actuator that actually makes it work. So hopefully that'll work, so stay tuned for a future video for that. But I have to think ahead and put the wiring in now for that. And finally, I want to run, I'm going to say 2 extra wires to go through the firewall while I'm there, because what I'll be doing is undoing all that really nice sort of tape job that they've got down here to push through with the rest of the wires, squeeze just a few more wires through to the inside of the car. Those will be spares for anything I want in the future. I mean, what if it was, say, I don't know, a supercharger that had a magnetic clutch? It could be, I mean, it could be anything, it could be, really. So, and I don't actually have to try and anticipate where the wire is going to go and string it to where I want it to go. All I really need to do is get it through the firewall to act as a sort of fish tape so that I could bring other wires, you know, connect to the other ends. So it's just good, I think, again, to think about some of these things ahead of time while you're here, and it's so much easier. So that's what I intend to do now. What I found was you can't go through with the bundle because it's kind of like glued in there. It's potted, I think. It's hard to see. My finger's in the way, but right there you can see right at the tip of my finger. So I had to kind of go just around the outside of that, but it still stays inside the rubber. And when I got, whoa, sorry for all this moving around. When I got to here, I hit, you know, the angle of the, I've got this little thin rod that I was using. When I got here, it was wanting to catch on the rubber and puncture through, which would work, but it looked to me like I might be able to squeeze by, so I was able to put a screwdriver in from this end to get to give it the room it needed. Let's see if I can do it with one hand. Yeah, it's gonna come through. There we go. See that? So one of the problems is it's very, very tight through there, and I need to get a bunch more wires through. I need to get these 4, and I'm happy to report they're very thin. So I have some very thin 22 gauge wire I can use for that. So that's good, but I still have to get the really thick one for the oil pressure gauge through there. So here we go. This is essentially the entire finished harness now. It doesn't look like I really did anything, but I just spent probably 2 hours going through all of this. What I did was I started down here where I've added the pieces. This is the regular oil pressure sensor. This is the new oil pressure sensor. This is the oil temperature sensor. And it plugs into a little pigtail that's already on the engine. I ran it through this split loom up here where I joined it in with some of that soft sort of cloth tape. I like it better than what's under here. This I can take that off, I think, and show you. This is just temporary, the Velcro. It's silicone tape, and it sticks to itself, and after a while it's supposed to sort of bond. I find that sometimes it'll peel up on the ends, and eventually some of it sticks, and it's important therefore to have a lot of wraps. And you're supposed to stretch it to twice its or half, I should say, its thickness. So you stretch it until it's next down to half the thickness when you wrap it around. And so I just put these on there to help hold the ends in place for, you know, a long time, hoping they would just bond and I wouldn't have to trim off whatever peeled up. But I prefer this soft tape, but it actually kind of comes off as well. So you have to use a lot of wraps no matter what you do, so you can trim a little off, whatever, you know, whatever falls off. And I ran those lines as best I could on a side that I thought would be favorable, a friendly side, if you will, of the harness all the way down. I left a little bit of excess in case I had to make twists and turns. This is probably more than I wanted, to be honest. But it's very tight where the silicone tape is. And it comes all the way to the firewall where I shoved a boatload of wires through. So the first 2 you know already, and then there are 4 little tiny ones, and the little tiny ones, which come out here and go to this bundle over here, are for the factory cruise control I intend to add. And then there are the brown and blue wires here that are simply spares. I'm going to leave that in the engine bay. I'll figure out how to secure it, and on the inside where the ECU is, like behind the brunk, will be the rest, just in case I ever need to run anything else. I left enough here for the cruise control computer to mount anywhere in behind the brunk, where the ECU is, all the way across the car. There's like 5 feet there. And on the other side, I've left all of the spool. So what happens is when the actuator goes in the car, I'll just run this in cut to length, and then I'll have those spools left over. But I didn't know how much I would need and where it was going to go. I think I do. I think it's going to go pretty much where the old air box went, because the air box will be gone now, since there'll be that intake, that cold air intake that came from Monkey Wrench. In its place, it runs along the back wall, leaves a little space. So I think the cruise control can go there. Alright, so hope it's not too long, but boy, it took a long time actually to get that all straightened out, but I think it's ready to be put onto the car now. So here's something I've alluded to, but I haven't actually explicitly shown, and that is that I make extensive notes, a step-by-step basically. So I'm on step 108, this is 108 that I'm about to add on here. 14 pages worth of notes, every little tiny thing, even some things that aren't steps, they're just more of, hey, I inspected this while I was there. And I'll even make notes to myself, when you reinstall, be careful this will break, or reinstall step 27 before, 22 or whatever. So I find this helps me make sure that it's error prevention is what it really is, right? Until all of these steps are checked off, the job isn't done. And you can see I check them off when each step is finished, but I also will use something like, I'll put a T and then 6.25 to show that I torqued that to 6.25 foot-pounds. And ideally there'd be a T next to everything, but I can't always get a torque wrench on it, or they're not always important. I mean, if you snap a connector together, it doesn't have a torque, right? So I also have things that I've just measured and notes that I've taken on whether or not, sometimes they're electrical measurements, the resistance of something to show that, hey, this component is still good or whatever. In this case, I made little drawings, and for this, what I did there, and I just want to include that in my notes in case I ever need to go back and reference any of that. And I also have some notes like go buy these products and stuff. So I just take very extensive notes. And I do this on paper. I'd like to do it electronically, and I tried it once, but electronically is difficult because I couldn't find a program I liked where, it'd be nice to take a picture instead of drawing one, because my drawings aren't always very good. But I couldn't find a program where I could include the pictures and the text very well. I don't want to type because my fingers are very dirty a lot of times, and it'll mess up my keyboard, and I don't have a trash computer to really use on this. Also, just integrating the photos, if you use something like Word, you can take a photo and then include it in, maybe, but it's just not easy. If there were something that was designed for this, I checked a couple of programs out for note taking, and they just didn't work for me. It's just easier to write on paper, and I have a lot of scrap paper laying around. So what I do sometimes, though, is I'll translate this to electronic form when I'm done. That way I can go back and reference it again later, and I'll include those photographs. Anyway, that's what I do. What do you do? So these metal gaskets, I wasn't really sure the way they went, because there's basically a bump out on one side, and of course it's in on the other. This gasket only goes on one way, and the bump is out. Does that mean they all go that way? I don't really know. I would assume so, but at the same time, this gasket down here is the same design, and it really looked to me like it should go on the inside, just because of the way the hole was. But I went ahead and flipped it around, did it this way, and hopefully it'll still seal. It may not even matter. It may be that if it's symmetrical, as long as it crushes, then it's okay, right? The other thing is, if yours didn't come with this part either, then how it goes, I had to lower the alternator out of the way, and this kind of goes in here, and it goes on at the top, and then there's a bolt right here on the intake manifold, and then you can see the two pipes get very close together. So the rubber hose that goes in there must be pretty small indeed, so I'm going to go look for one of those. Here's my collection of hoses I got from the dealership. I got pretty much everything. This one looks to be nice and short. Looks like too large of a diameter, but I'm guessing that's got to be it. So let's give it a try. That is a fit, and because it's an OEM part, this is pretty cool. They put a little white mark here, and an arrow on the housing telling you how it goes on. Okay, some mentioned that getting the IAC off is a real struggle because these 3 screws are very, very tight. And yeah, I was going to take them off now, maybe even replace them with hex bolts. And you can see, let me set it down. This one I'm already kind of struggling with. Painting it probably didn't help either, but so I think I'm definitely going to do that now. Well, that's a new one on me. This screw was so tight that I tried different tips to get one that would fit, and this one actually broke off. I guess this is only meant for light duty. Crap. So I handled this the way I often handle it. I welded a bolt onto the screw and I hit it with water really quick. But you can see how black and charred it is around the outside, so hopefully I didn't overheat something in there and then the IAC won't work. Probably worked fine before I did this, but anyway, that got it out. Okay, I've run into the next little issue with the swap. According to the way they were hooked up when I received this motor, these 2 tubes go this way, but the one connected here on the 2ZZ, it goes to the evap on the 1ZZ. Actually, I know exactly where that goes. So, but it swings around, so I'm not sure what hooks into the evap then on the MR on the other end where this would normally plug in. And another one is, well, while I'm here, you'll notice that there's a hose here, and that's about it. 2 on the sort of intake manifold just behind the throttle body. And if you look at the 2ZZ, there's actually one here, and a little tiny one down there, as well as this one and this one. Where do those go? So I'm gonna have to go and figure all this out, but I'm thinking that maybe one of these would go to the evap instead. They're smaller though. Anyway, I'm gonna have to go try and get some kind of a hose routing thing going on up here to figure it out. I talked to Monkey Wrench Racing and I showed them a photo. 2 photos actually, one for the 1ZZ and one for this 2ZZ. He said that this hose and this hose are connected correctly, which makes sense because that's the way it came, and they go over to here. You plug this little tiny hole down here, it's not used, and this one are used for the brake booster and the evap. They go to the same place, so I kind of don't think it actually matters which way you hook it around. However, this does beg the question, what's up with all this? And the answer is that there are different flavors of the 2ZZ. I've been going on the premise, anytime I go to a parts store, that I have a 2001 Celica GTS with a 2ZZ motor. And I thought, from now on, I'm just going to order parts. Whenever I order parts that have to do with the engine, I would say that and to get the right part. And as apparently I am wrong, because the Celica throttle body apparently comes out straight, and the Corolla, or I guess it's actually Corolla in other countries, and it's the Matrix here, the XRS version has the 2ZZ engine in it, and there's also the Pontiac Vibe will come with the 2ZZ. I'm not sure what flavor, but the point is, if it comes up like this, then I actually have the Matrix XRS 2ZZ, and now I guess I should be telling people that's what I have, because there are slight differences. And so this guide that I'm doing here is only valid for my engine. I really don't know much about the rest of them. So this whole XRS Corolla Celica thing leads to another problem, which is the fact that I have kind of no place to hook the throttle up to. So if you look at the 1ZZ over here, I have this extra plate added on, so the cable feeds through there, to this, and that's what it works against. So I thought, oh, well, no problem. I'll just pull these 2 bolts off here, and I'll move it to the 2ZZ. However, if you come over to the 2ZZ, you'll see that there is no place to bolt that on. I scoured the internet looking for a place to put that on and see how theirs was done. And on the Matrix, there's this whole bracket. I'm not sure really where it attaches. It's kind of hard to get a good view, but it kind of fits around this way, and it has the thing coming off, and then the cable kind of goes this direction onto this. I'm sick of buying parts, especially simple little stuff like a bracket, so I think I'm probably just going to fab up something myself for that, and I'll just probably put 2 holes in it and use the bracket that I showed you over there. Good luck. There are a lot of little details here to solve. Alright, so it's time to remove the transmission, this filthy transmission from this filthy engine, the filthy animal. About, I don't know, 3 years ago, maybe 3.5, I made one of the worst decisions of my life, and I bought this transmission brand new from Monkey Wrench Racing. It's a 6-speed transmission where the first 5 gears are the same as the original 5-speed transmission, so it just has 1 extra overdrive for better gas mileage on the interstate. It does have a limited slip differential in it, but the reason it was one of the worst purchases of my life is that I pretty much hated everything about it. When I first put it in, it shifted into gears, but when I started the motor and it was running, it wouldn't shift into gears. So I contacted Monkey Wrench and I asked them about it, and they said that what happens is a lot of times when people are putting it in, they get tired, they take a little rest, and the transmission's sort of hanging there, and it warps the clutch, makes it like a potato chip. So the clutch won't disengage, and that makes it hard to shift or won't even go into gear. And that is in fact exactly what I did. At that point, I'd done so much work getting in and out, I was really fatigued, and I just decided I was done with it. So I took it to a transmission shop and had them redo it. And they pulled the transmission off and they measured the clutch, the run out on the clutch, and it was perfect. They said this clutch is not warped, but had no explanation as to why it wouldn't go into gear. What solved the problem was replacing the clutch anyway. So this is something that's always confused me, right? I replaced the clutch with a stock Toyota clutch, and it's kind of worked ever since then, but I want to say very shortly after that point, it would crunch going into gears, like the synchros were bad. But it was a brand new transmission. I didn't understand that, and I thought it had to have something to do with this clutch. And I drove it like that for a while, and it was crunching all the time, and I could just, it went to my spine just knowing that I was basically destroying the synchros every time I shifted. And at one point I was able to sort of figure out like how to shift without it crunching. I was always trying to be very gentle with it, and I figured out a way, if I let the RPMs drop and then put it into gear, it wouldn't crunch. And I didn't understand this because I thought it would need to be rev matched in order not to crunch, because if you rev match, you don't even need a clutch really. You can just slide the two together, they're at the same speed. But that wasn't the case. It was always letting it drop really low and then shifting into gear. And when I did that, after a while, the transmission just started shifting normally, and it's been kind of normal ever since. It crunches every so often, but mostly it just shifts normally now, and I don't understand any of that. I changed the fluid from royal purple. People were saying that's not good for transmission. Use red line, so I did that. It didn't make any difference. But when the purple stuff came out, it came out brown. I think I may have mentioned this along the way. And I thought, well, that's my synchros. That's what's in there, right? But it seems to be shifting okay. However, it's still not a transmission that I like. It was still the worst decision I made even after that, because the gear shifting is so close, one gear to the other, it's very difficult to select gear sometimes. And I find myself coming off a corner, if I'm at real high speed and I want to shift into third gear, I come off the corner, I hit the gas, and nothing happens because, oh, look, I shifted into fifth. Second is hard too, because normally you would come over and then back. So you go all the way over and then back into second. But there's no reverse lockout on this. And I don't know why I thought it was included in this, but it doesn't. I can just go into reverse like any other gear. And so when I go over to second, I go a little bit too far, and then it won't go into second because I've gone a little bit too far. So in a hurry, downshifting to second, it's really hard because I keep partially going into reverse. sometimes when I'm sitting at a light, I'm trying to find first gear, and I have to let the clutch out a little bit to see if the car goes forward or reverse, because I'm not 100% certain if I have it in reverse or first. So this transmission's been a nightmare, and I thought about getting rid of it now, but it's just so expensive to get the other 6-speed, and I have an idea on how I might be able to mitigate it. So that's a long diatribe, I apologize, but I'm interested to see when I pull this off what the clutch and the flywheel look like, because my only explanation as to why any of this stuff happened, since this was essentially a brand new transmission, it wasn't like rebuilt or used or something like that, it was a new transmission, and I paid extra for that, a lot of extra. The only thing I can think of that may be causing this is the Fidanza light and flywheel I put in there. Maybe that's why I didn't like the clutch flywheel combination or something. So it'll be interesting to pull that out and see what it looks like. And that's why I ordered the Monkey Wrench Racing light and flywheel this time, hoping that it would, you know, I have had okay luck with Fidanza in the past, but maybe just in this application, I don't know. All right, so enough of that. Okay, another development in this ongoing piece of crap 2ZZ swap. Allow me to show you the latest. This appears to be a crack in the case of the transmission. I accept responsibility for this because I had it on the jack. I was getting ready to start putting it on the engine when I realized, well, I was going to really need to put the engine on the engine hoist in case it started moving around. I didn't want it to fall over. When I bumped this, it was just basically balanced there, I guess, and it fell about, I don't know, a little over a foot to the ground. It also fell once, so I did it twice. Once it fell off this cart when I was trying to push it in, it rolled off and I kind of half caught it. In fact, I half caught it both times. But the weird thing is, when I was cleaning this up to paint it, the crack wasn't there. I mean, it's pretty obvious, unless the paint brought it out, because when I was cleaning it, I did not notice a crack, and I didn't drop it in between cleaning it and painting it. As you can imagine, I was pretty upset with myself for breaking the transmission. Even though I never liked it, it's a pretty expensive piece of equipment, and I had a hard time believing that I had done it, to be honest. It kind of half fell on my foot both times, and it just didn't seem like that hard of an impact. So I also didn't understand how I could miss this crack when I was cleaning it, but then see it when I was painting it. I mean, I cleaned it right there. I remember doing it, and I didn't. It was right in my face. And so I decided to go back and look at some of the past video I'd shot, and yeah, sure enough, it was there the whole time I was cleaning it. And then I started thinking, well, when did this crack form? And I went all the way back, and I'll show you a rerun of the video I posted a couple videos ago. When I pulled the engine out, the crack was there. So I didn't do it just now. I don't believe I had any issues like that when I first put it in 2-3 years ago. So now if it's easy enough for me to miss the crack when I'm right there cleaning it, basically intimate with it, maybe it was there when I put it in and I just didn't see it. Or maybe it can crack while it's in the car. I really don't know. It could even be that the shop cracked it that I brought it to. I don't know when it happened. All I know is it was there when I pulled the engine out of the car, which makes me feel a little bit better, but only a little bit, because the fix for this is about a $2,500 purchase. And the reasoning is, yes, I know they can be had for less, but I didn't want one that had a lot of mileage on it. I was thinking about going for new, but that would have been like $4 grand. And that's a replacement with the somewhat sportier 6-speed transmission with a limited slip. I have to have a limited slip. I hate open diffs. I was actually thinking about going for the 5-speed, and I would have been happy with that. I actually thought that the car was more fun to drive with the 5-speed. And if I still have some of the same problems not being able to find gears with a 6-speed, I have a plan to mitigate that. So I went for the used 6-speed transmission, low mileage with a limited slip, and that's what it costs. So I'm kind of throwing money at this whole thing, and now I'm pushing close to 10 grand, and I'm just thinking to myself, man, what could I have gotten for that money? You know, what are old Porsche Boxsters going for these days? It is what it is. So don't make any of these mistakes. Don't wait till the last minute. Buy a cheaper engine. Don't go for newer stuff. Don't drop things. You know, don't do what I did. That's where we are now, and I think in this round the Spyder's going to win.